All right, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about Steve Ranazizi, who you might remember from that TV show The League, or from Buffalo Wild Wing commercials, or you might remember him as the guy who lied about being in one of the Twin Towers during 9/11, or you've never heard of him, and now you know him as the guy that lied about being in the Twin Towers during 9/11. But unfortunately, that is probably what he's mostly known for. And at the time, this was a huge news story, and it completely derailed his career, even though it's not like he was the biggest actor. But his career was trending upwards. The League was a pretty big show, and those Buffalo Wild Wing commercials were probably paying pretty well, and it was probably an easy gig and everything. But right when he admitted to lying, he lost that job, and the League was wrapping up. It was on its last season, so that was pretty much over. And he really hasn't done much acting since. Like, one of the only things he's done was Avengers of Justice Farce Wars, where he starred next to Shawn Michaels. So I think it's safe to say that this guy was canceled, but he still does do stand-up and podcasts, and he's really good friends with Ari Shaffir. And he was on the Joe Rogan Experience once, but it was before he was exposed, even though I'm sure Ari has been begging Joe ever since to have him back on. But this has to be one of the most bizarre ways for someone to get canceled. This guy got canceled for lying about something. So I'm going to go into it a little bit here and take a look back at it and talk about how it unraveled for him and how he handled it afterwards. So he had been telling this lie for, I think, like 14 years. Basically, once he moved to LA from New York City, and he got into stand-up and show business, which was right after 9/11. So he just started saying he's in one of the towers, I guess because it's a more interesting story, and it's obviously going to help people remember you and probably help your career a little bit. Like, right after it happens, if you tell somebody you're just in one of the towers, obviously people are going to take note of that, and they're going to be like, wow, that's crazy. What the hell was that like? So he decided to go with that, and where he went wrong is when he was on a podcast. I think he did 2 podcasts where he talked about it, and one of them was Marc Maron's. And during it, Steve decided to just randomly bring this story up. I don't think Marc asked about it. It doesn't sound like Marc even knew about it, but Steve decided to just start going into detail about how he's in one of the Twin Towers during 9/11. And this is already 9 or 10 years after he first started telling this story. So I don't know why he didn't just let it die out. His career was already going well at this point. He should have been like, all right, I used that to get a head start. I'm lucky I got away with it. Let me just stop telling the story and hope people forget about it. But instead, he decided to go on a podcast and tell this story to possibly hundreds of thousands of people. And he went into a lot of detail.
Sort of the party starter of Merrill Lynch, yeah. Until our building got hit with a plane, and
Christ.
yeah, the party ended right there.
That's
That's where the party. I worked on the 54th floor of the second tower.
Get the out of here.
Yeah.
Did you evacuate that day?
I was there, and then the first tower got hit, and we were jostled all over the place. And then the Port Authority came on the loudspeaker, and they were like, "Hey, explosion in Tower 1. Things are being taken care of. Everyone remain where you are. Stay calm. We're figuring things out." And I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go check this thing out." So I went downstairs, walked outside, saw all the pandemonium, and then about 5 or 6 minutes later, and then it just bang.
While you were standing right there.
Well, it was like underneath the giant overpass that was overhang that was right by.
And all your coworkers were upstairs?
Yeah, but I don't know. I couldn't tell exactly where it went in, so I had no idea.
Right.
So I called up to the office, and they were like, it was pandemonium. Like, we're on our way down. And then I just started fucking booking it.
Oh my God.
And I got to about West Broadway when I stopped and caught my breath, and then they watched the second tower fall. Our tower fell first.
It did?
Yeah. The second one that got hit was the first one to fall. And then, because it was the impact was lower, so there was more weight on top, I think, is the way it was described to me.
Like
we had no idea. I literally, as far as that's concerned, I had no idea what was going on till 3 hours into it. I just thought it was 2 drunk idiots. I couldn't tell the size of the planes or anything like that. I just was.
You thought really it was 2 drunk idiots? Like they were up there
the
going,
second time,
what's
yeah.
this?
The second time I was like, well, something's going on here, but it did not dawn on me that.
Well, you must have been in shock. I mean,
still had dreams of those falling dreams. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, worked on the 24th floor, and I didn't know where she was for like 7 hours, 6 hours.
No way.
And what happened was I'd walked home and then got to my apartment, caught my breath, watched the news, and then about an hour goes by, 2 hours go by, no her. And I'm like, oh, I now have to call her parents and tell her she's dead. And she comes walking to the door. What happened was she was on the subway in, and she was underneath the water. So because the Trade Center was the first stop in Manhattan, they had to back out all the subways
And I think he also talked about this during an interview or podcast or something with Pauly Shore around the same time in 2011. But still, Steve wasn't actually exposed until 2015 when somebody from the New York Times caught onto this. I don't know if somebody gave him a tip or something, but somebody realized the details he was telling in the stories weren't the same. Like, he told two different stories or something like that. Like, I'm pretty sure the other time he told this story, he said he was on one of the top floors, and he said he always kept a parachute under his desk. So once the plane hit, he just base jumped out of there. No, I'm kidding. He didn't go that far, but he screwed up the stories or something, and they caught on to him. So somebody from the New York Times called him, and they're like, hey, we're writing this story. Do you want to comment on it? So he realized he was pretty much screwed, and he decided to come clean on Twitter. He said, as a young man, I made a mistake that I deeply regret, and for which apologies may still not be enough. After I moved with my wife to Los Angeles from New York City in 2001, shortly after 9/11, I told people that I was in one of the World Trade Center towers on 9/11. It wasn't true. I was in Manhattan, but working in a building in Midtown, and I was not at the Trade Center on that day. So then the article came out, and everybody started talking about this. This was a pretty big story. Probably just because how strange it is, you know, it's so weird. And then shortly after all the news broke, he decided to go on the Howard Stern show to talk about it, which is an interesting decision. You know, I don't think this really hurt him or helped him at all, but I'm glad he did it because it did make for a good interview. You know, Howard asked him some tough questions.
Since this whole thing went down, do you ever say to yourself, why? I mean, do you say, like, are you aware why you lied about being in the Twin Towers?
Absolutely.
You are aware why?
I'm becoming more aware as I,
Right.
as I speak to people.
Because sometimes when you make up a story like this, the easy answer is to say, well, I did it for some sort of attention or something. But I mean, the real deep why is there's got to be something deeply psychological about this. You want people to love you or something like that.
To be honest, I think it's when I moved to Los Angeles, it was about a month after 9/11, and I moved with my girlfriend, and she got a job right away. And she
in
started
show
making
business?
friends. No, she was. She got a job as a nanny, and she started
Right.
making friends, and she was making money. And I was hanging out at comedy clubs and
trying to make it.
Trying to just not even make it. Make it was not even a thought in your mind. Just fit in, like
Right.
survive, make some friends, and just try to start living a life. And
do you think of yourself as psychologically disturbed? How do you view yourself after doing this
I
thing?
mean, I don't know. Psychologically disturbed, I'm not sure if that's the way to put it. I mean, I do see someone, and I'm starting to figure out more about myself. Codependency and wanting people to like me and to make people happy. That's a big thing.
Steve, do you think it's like? Is it kind of like, hey, if people feel bad for me, maybe they'll like me? Is that it?
I don't. Maybe, perhaps. I mean, but when I tell you it's not like I moved to Los Angeles with this story, with the thought of like, I'm going to go out and trick everyone out there and tell them this is what it is.
It wasn't calculated.
It wasn't calculated at all. It was as simple as sitting at the Comedy Store and everyone like, hey, you're from New York? Yeah. Were you just there? You were around? Yeah. I was downtown. Yeah, I was there. You work there? Yeah, I did. And if you have like 15 seconds, I think.
Right.
To kind of go, wait, hold on, stop. I'm sorry, that's not true.
Right.
And if you pass that 15 seconds, it's sort of like now
it becomes the story. It becomes
a thing where you're like, now I have to be the guy who's very strange and weird and just said I lied about 9/11.
Right.
And Howard, when I tell you, I truly, in all of my heart, wish that I had that voice that I feel like I have now that said, hey man, take a breath, relax. People are going to like you. People are going to understand who you are when they get to know you. You don't need to lie about that. Take that back.
But how did it gain steam? I mean,
it's sort of like when you tell a couple of open mic comedians, they start to talk to other people, and then at the Comedy Store, it was like you had open mic comedians, you had successful comedians, and then you had stars come in, like
right.
Pauly Shore was there all the time, and Dice, and then those guys hear it. And then Dice,
they notice you now.
Dice would be like, "Hey, how are you?" And he started calling me T2, a nickname, and
right.
And I was like, I'm like, I don't know now. I don't know how to ever tell anyone that this is not true. The hurt and the pain and the nervousness that you hear now comes from because I know what I did was terrible, and I know that I hurt a lot of people.
Right.
People that that lost people that helped people survive, people
right.
that. And those people
those are the people that I truly am sorry. That's why I wanted to come on here, because I wanted to talk to you and your audience, because you're personified with New York, and your audience is, those are the people that truly, I in my heart, I feel awful that
Yeah.
that my dumb mistake created a story that just, hit a
Yeah.
wound that should never have been touched.
But
Could
you
you-
didn't come out publicly. I mean, you had made these public statements.
Yes.
And you didn't come out publicly and say this was not true until you were outed.
I didn't know how. I didn't know what to do. Do I call a press conference? Do I write I didn't know what to do.
Right.
And and to be honest with you, when I told some people, especially some friends, I said, I have to tell you something. This is very important. And then I tell them, and they go, "Oh, I thought you were like sick or something." And I said, "Well, this is they go, you know what? I didn't even think about it. I didn't. Most people don't associate me with 9/11, believe it or not.
Right.
They really don't. I mean, since the stories have now come out, obviously they do. But if people for the last 15 years, it came up in pockets, and I would never be like, "Hey, I'm Steve Renazizi. I'm the the 9/11 comedian."
You're saying it sounds to me like it came about when you are most insecure. You're a young guy. You're sitting at the comedy club with some really established comedians, and suddenly you need some way to bond with them for them to want to know you. And you tell this rather dramatic story. And I think that's when you go, this is really working for me. This is something where I'm more interesting. I don't feel good about myself being interesting on my own. This is my way into the club.
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think it was like, oh, this makes me more interesting. I truly believe that. I mean, I can remember how quickly it came. People were just like, "You're in New York." Yeah. I worked down. I was downtown. You work there? Yeah, I work there. And then, like I said, it's
in a split second.
a split second where you're like, wait, what did I? And then it just starts. It gets away from you.
Did you ever start to believe this story and start to think like maybe I was in the Twin Towers?
No, because no, I never did.
Are you working with a psychiatrist now to sort of help you really unravel this whole mystery?
I am.
You are.
I have been for the last couple of years.
And is it helping you?
Yeah, it is helping me because I didn't know what codependency was before a year ago. I didn't know what, narcissism was,
right,
or that before that. I didn't know a lot about myself, but when you realize, okay, this is a stupid mistake that I made, and then how do I become better?
Well,
It's
Steve,
that's the point.
Yeah.
Looks like you're trying to work past this. I don't dare go to the phones to see if people are how they're feeling because that might
Don't
be
wanna
like
hear.
you might get the beaten out of you,
Right.
like on Twitter, and maybe you don't need that right now because I'm sure you were nervous as hell coming in here.
It's
and,
been yeah. I mean, like I told Steve outside, I've been here before, and this is never the way I thought I was ever going to walk into
Right.
this building.
I know.
'Cause
Yeah.
You're a hero of mine.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I hope that things work out okay for you, and you're able to get past this, and that people are able to give you some forgiveness, and I thank you for coming in and telling us your story, because my inclination would be to just gonna hide in the house and never come out
I
again.
thought about that for a while, and
Yeah.
to be honest with you, there was a big, my wife's like, I don't think you should go on Howard. I don't know if you
Is
should
that
do that.
right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people said that, and I just said, I'm a true fan. I've listened for many years, and I go, I think that he will be able to listen to me, and I know. I know that his audience are the people that I want to say I'm sorry to.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm looking at the phones. There are people still want to scream at you. And, Mehmet back in our office wants to scream at you and yell at you. People are angry. I'm angry, too. I mean, this is such a horrible, thing that happened in our history, and to lie about it seems so wrong. But at the same point, too, I know you're a human being, and I know that you probably did not want to hurt anyone. If anything, you were doing this to be accepted.
I mean, to me,
That's
it's
how
like,
I'm
yeah,
looking at it.
exactly. That's what it was. It was just a little, it wasn't like I was on a cruise somewhere. I wasn't in New York. It was just,
Yeah.
a little step forward.
So he used this story to try to get a head start in his career, but karma ended up catching up with him, and it led to the downfall of his career as well. So in the end, it all kind of evened out. In the beginning of his career, the story probably helped him a lot, but then it obviously just took him right back down, so it was not worth it at all. And he definitely would have been in a better position if he had just never told that story, because a lot of people did think he was funny, and they really enjoyed him on The League. And then when they heard about this news, I'm sure they're just really disappointed. Like Pete Davidson, whose dad actually passed away during 9/11, he said he was a big fan of Steve's and he loved The League.
I'm a big fan of his, and I actually I tweeted him I'd say 2 or 3 years ago, and I tweeted him saying, "Hey, heard you got into comedy because of 9/11. I think that's really cool." And then he tweeted me back something like that, and I was always like, "What? What a weird response."
Yeah, that is a weird something like that.
Something like that.
And then there are a few really cringy things that Steve did after this. One of them has to do with Pete Davidson again. When Pete Davidson heard this news, he put out this tweet joking about it. He said, "It's okay, Steve. People make mistakes. Can't wait to meet my dad for lunch later." And then Steve responded and said, "Thank you, Pete. I really appreciate it." And then Pete responded again. He said, "Dude, please delete this tweet. I don't want people to think you're a moron. You're way smarter than this." And then soon after this, Steve decided to do a roast battle on Comedy Central. And I wish I could play this clip, but it would get copyright claimed and blocked and everything. But I guess he thought it'd be a good idea if somebody like would roast him about the 9/11 stuff. But he ended up doing really bad. Like, he just botched all his jokes, which I guess kind of helped because then people got to see him be humiliated again, which is kind of what he deserved. And even the 9/11 jokes weren't that great. It was just an awkward roast battle altogether. It felt like I was watching a Deaf Noodles roast or something. So now looking back on it all, it seems like Steve has definitely paid for the lie he told, rightfully so. You know, obviously lying about something like this is insane and there's something wrong with this guy. But I would imagine after everything he went through, hopefully he learned his lesson. You know, I'd imagine he did because he was just publicly humiliated, and I can't imagine he'd ever tell a lie again in his life. And also, I'd imagine most people in Hollywood in the entertainment industry would make up stories like this or have made up stories like this to further their career. You know, most of those people are doing whatever they can to try to get roles. And also, a lot of other comedians like to make up stuff as well. Like Brendan Schaub and Bert Kreischer, half the stuff that comes out of their mouth is a lie. So Steve, he fits right in with these people, you know, but he's the one who lied about like the worst thing possible. And I'm sure a lot of people could probably never forgive him for it. But let me know what you guys think about it all down in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you check out my Patreon. There are probably over 25 videos on there at this point, and I post every week, and most videos are pretty long. I just posted a video about the downfall of Milo Yiannopoulos, and I also posted a video about Michael Richards, you know, Kramer's infamous meltdown at the Laugh Factory. So if you want to hear about that stuff, make sure you check it out. And thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.